It's like my 5th take of this video. Oh my god. Oh, tea and beer are the only drugs for me. Drugs. Don't use them. Drugs are bad. Okay? Just say no. Winners don't use drugs. You're a fool. I can't think of any other anti-drug slogans. If you can think of any other anti-drug slogans that have stuck with you, write them in the comments. So, a load of people have been asking me about the Vikings using drugs. Today we're going to be talking about that, and we're going to be talking about their religious use. We're going to be talking about the history of drugs in kind of the old world, if you want. And we're also going to be talking about where they probably weren't using drugs. So let's start with a little brief history. Now, we know that drugs of one kind or another, and I'm not talking about alcohol here. Alcohol is a drug. It's on the poisons list here in the UK. I'm talking about hallucinogenic, make you go a little bit cuckoo drugs. We know they've been in use for a very, very long time. This Minoan statuette, what does that crown look like to you? Because to me, those look like poppy seed heads. And if those are poppy seed heads, that suggests that the Minoans were smoking opium. Now, they were probably taking the seeds, putting them on a fire, and inhaling the fumes in a very small room in a palace in Knossos, or in a cave. We know they used caves as holy sites. But that's not the Vikings. Fair enough. Okay, let's move a little further along to the Delphic Oracle. I'm sure most of you guys already know what the Oracle at Delphi is. I'm sure you can describe it better than I can, but I'm going to describe the Delphic Oracle as a specialist priestess who sees and speaks with the gods to give advice to the ancient Greeks. So let's say you're Athens and Persia is going to invade. You might go up to Delphi to ask the Oracle, what should we do? Should we fight the Persians? Should we run away? And the Delphic Oracle would say something like,
let the wooden walls protect you.
And you'd be like, cool beans, haven't got any walls. You are high as a kite. Then you realise that she's talking about the wooden walls of your navy and you having the biggest navy because you are a thalassocratic hegemon will help you. There you go, you see? Oracle. Totally oracular. So that's the Delphic Oracle. She's a specialist sort of seer, a seeress, if you like. She sees things that normal human beings cannot perceive. And she does that with the aid of some kind of mystery smoke that she's said to dance around in and well, inhale. Sounds a lot like she's inhaling the smoke of some kind of hallucinogenic drug, right? But what kind of drug is it? Is it opium? I mean, could be, but the whole dancing around thing, maybe not. I mean, could it be cannabis? Could it be cannabis smoke that she's inhaling? Herodotus tells us that the Scythians and various other ancient cultures used hemp seeds, but then again, Herodotus is 110% bullshit, so it's difficult to believe him. I mean, he also said that there were giant ants in the desert that poop gold, so you tell me. It seems likely she was inhaling something. The top contender for me is stinking henbane. Stinking henbane's a great name for a plant, but what does it do, James? Well, I'll tell you in just a minute, because stinking henbane is something that we do have evidence for in the Viking Age. Now, there is a woman's grave from around, I think, the 820s, 830s, from a place in Denmark called Firkat. The Firkat grave is interpreted as a volva, or a seeress. A seer. Someone who sees things that cannot be perceived by the normal mortal eye, just like the Delphic Oracle. She was carrying a big metal stick that has weird rings on it to rattle and sound cool. She was dressed in quite nice-looking clothes, and she had a pouch of henbane seeds. So stinking henbane seems to have been something associated with these vulvas, these seers, these magic practitioners. What can they do with these seeds? Well, they can burn them on a fire, and when you burn the seeds of stinking henbane on a fire and breathe in the smoke, guess what? It causes hallucinations. It can make you see weird stuff. Weird stuff like maybe Odin. Weird stuff like maybe the gods looking at you and telling you what to do. weird stuff. Hallucinogenic stuff. Oracular stuff. Totally oracular. Now, are these vulvas using stinking henbane to see what the gods need, to see what the will of the gods is? Are you likely to have been wandering through a forest in Viking Age Scandinavia and just seen a vulva, flat out, high as a kite, looking at things that you can't see? Yeah, maybe. It's entirely possible. Think about it. We have this evidence that they had magic practitioners. The likelihood is that these practitioners were communicating with the gods for people who can't. That's the whole point of this kind of priest, is they can talk to the gods, they can communicate with them better than you. That's the whole purpose of them. They're closer to the gods than you are because they understand the mystical magic of speaking with them. Okay, cool. How do they do that? Well, we're not quite sure, but we found one with henbane seeds, which causes hallucinations. So is she taking henbane to see the gods that gives her this magical ability? Maybe. Makes sense, right? I mean, tell me what you guys think, but it makes sense to me. But do we have any further evidence? Well, the Oseberg ship in Norway from, again, around the first half of the 9th century. We're not 100% certain just yet. Probably never will be, but pretty certain it's the 830s. One of the women had a leather pouch containing hemp seeds, or cannabis seeds. They also found one of the weird vulva staffs in the ship. So, are these two women in their 50s and 70s vulvas? Are they seers? We don't know. But one of them's got a staff, which suggests that she's a vulva. And she's got some funky seeds in her pouch, which suggests that she's doing something with them. But then cannabis seeds don't really have that much THC in them. THC is the chemical compound that makes you see cool stuff, changes your perceptions. But 1,000 years ago, more than 1,000 years ago, nearly 1,200 years ago, was the composition a little different? This isn't one of those cultivated varieties of cannabis that people over in California have spent decades perfecting. This is a wild variety, a feral strain, if you like. And maybe if you couldn't get hold of stinking henbane, or you didn't want to risk, I don't know, not peeing for a day, keeling over and dying, maybe you'd use the cannabis instead. Obviously, the other option here is, well, hemp was used to make cordage and sails for boats, so maybe they were just taking some seeds along so that they could grow hemp in the next life. You know, maybe in the next world they intend to grow their own hemp so that they can sail. None of the cords or materials on the ship were made of hemp, by the way, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's not what they were using them for. It might just mean that they didn't want to bury their best sails and ropes on a funeral boat, you know? So we've got these two finds of hallucinogenic drugs. One of them we can explain away as, bah, maybe they were just using it for textiles. But henbane? You're not growing henbane to make sails with. You're growing henbane for either a medicinal purpose or hallucinogenic reasons. Which brings us on to Berserkers. Now, I'm not doing a Berserker video here, but one of the theories is that Berserkers were fed henbane before battle. That's a bad theory, because if you eat henbane, you get really sick. And you don't want somebody really sick in battle, you want somebody bloodthirsty. Maybe they inhaled the henbane smoke and the vulva guided them on a kind of... guided them on a trip. You know? Maybe she was like a trip buddy. And said, Odin is there, Thor is there, what are they saying to you? What are they asking you? Oh, they're asking me to kill my enemies. Awesome, go kill the enemy tomorrow. Oh, I will. Ah, praise Odin. Yeah, you know? Maybe. Who knows? Well, that's just it, isn't it? Nobody knows. We don't know. We have no evidence at all. Now, the other theory, the fly agaric theory, is these berserkers would eat the classic toadstool, fly agaric, the Amanita fungus, and go mad for battle. It's unlikely. It's likely it would have given them horrible stomach cramps and led to them puking their guts up for the next day. But making them bloodthirsty, vicious warriors? Nah, highly unlikely. Might have killed them, though. The other problem with that is none of the actual Viking Age texts we have describe drugs being given to berserkers. They're described as big, they're described as strong. In some of the tales and sagas, they're described as being able to change shape in the midst of battle. So, from the stuff that's actually reasonable sounding, they seem to just be really big, strong warriors who get bloodlust. And honestly, it's sad, but most of the time in history, when men are described as sad and sullen apart from in battle, it's because they have PTSD. It's because the only time they feel they can let loose and be themselves again is when they're killing other people. And that's a real tragedy. It's not this romanticized, heavy metal, drug-crazed lunacy that some people think it is. It's much, much more likely that these berserkers were just professional soldiers who didn't have anything else to live for. Anyway, drugs. So, if they're using henbane, and they're using it to give themselves hallucinations, does that mean, Jimmy, that for once, in one of your videos, you are going to come to a conclusion that isn't, we don't know? Yeah, I'm pretty convinced that the Norse were using drugs, and I'm pretty convinced that the drug they were using was stinking henbane. I think it is a fair little logic jump to say that a seeress who is carrying equipment that appears to be ritual in nature, who is carrying henbane seeds that we know cause hallucinations, and that we know from later and earlier sources are used as medicine and as ritual magic, is using these seeds to get stinking high and see the gods. That is something I can get behind. I think, and I don't mean that in an encouraging way. I don't mean I can get behind it in like, I'm going to go try it out. Don't try this at home. Stinking henbane is really dangerous. Do not try this at home. It's really, really bad for you. A couple of older people ate some stinking henbane that they thought was a parsnip, and they had to be rushed to hospital, and they couldn't pee, and they were having horrible seizures, and they just don't do it. Don't do it. Winners don't use drugs. But I mean, I can get behind the theory. I can get behind the idea that, yeah, stinking henbane seeds were being used in the Viking Age to see the gods, or to do other things, you know, to tell tales around a campfire and everybody get a little bit crazy with it. Imagine a gang of Norsemen in the forest, and instead of it being like in Vikings, where everyone's painting themselves and painting each other and roaring, everybody's just getting gently high and telling tales about Sleipnir. How cool is that? I think it's cool. I think it's cool anyway. Oh, phrase of the week. So the phrase of the week this week is going to be a little bit mysterious, a little bit dark. In fact, it's going to be entirely dark, because the phrase of the week this week is Vel bol buwch. Vel bol buwch. This has got a few Welsh-specific letter sounds in it, like the V sound that you get from the single F, and the Ch, the guttural sound from the CH. Ch. I'm sure I don't need to tell you how to make that noise, but it does help if you don't have too much spit in your mouth. Otherwise you can gob it on people, which isn't very friendly. So, vel bol buwch. Vel, like a, bol, tummy, buwch, cow, like a cow's stomach. It means it's really, really dark. So if somebody asks you what it's like out in the forest because the vulva is out there and you need to go and ask her opinion on the next raiding mission, you could say, Vel bol buwch. It's like a cow's stomach. Bring a torch. So, Vel bol buwch. I just like it. I just enjoy it as a concept. It makes me think of people, you know, cutting open tauntauns with lightsabers to shelter in them. Another little announcement just before we sign off is the Patreon is going to have Discord stuff on it. So if anybody is on the Patreon train, that's going to be open to all little tiers in the Patreon. Whatever you are feeling like you can contribute, go for it. And hopefully we'll build a nice little community on there for people to discuss, because obviously you can go on there no matter what time of day it is, and it means that time zones aren't a problem anymore. Amazing. So there you go. I think the Vikings probably used drugs. I think the Norse probably inhaled henbane and hallucinated and saw really weird stuff in the fjords and forests of Scandinavia. Yeah, that's my tuppenny worth. There's some reading on this down in the video description. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I thoroughly enjoyed researching it. I think it's absolutely fascinating that we have these seeds that we have some solid evidence for this, which I think is just fantastic. And I also think it's really interesting that it's always been, so far at least, in the context of women. So there you go. Women seeming to have a very important role in Viking religion. There's another video there, I think. Unwaith eto, diolch yn fawr iawn i chi gyd am ymuno. Thank you once again to everybody for joining. Na I weld chi tro nesa. I'll see you next time. But until then, hwyl am y tro. Bye for now. Really, you're going to start hammering down with rain just as I'm about to record? You're going to do that to me, are you? You are as well.